In this screencast, we are going to discuss strategies for reading and understanding code that you did not write. This is an important skill because as a programmer, you will often be working with others and will need to read and understand their code. If you need to debug or modify somebody else's design, you may need to read the entire design carefully and understand all of its details. However, if you just need to use designs that were written by other people, you likely don't need to understand all of the detail. You just need to read enough of the code so that you have an understanding of how it can be used. Let's start by skimming over this entire file so that we can see what we have to work with. First, we see that our problem statement is that we have to complete the design of Create Medication label. Now, before I start skimming, I'm going to think strategically about how to read this code, rather than just starting at the top of the file and reading every line. I'll start by skimming the partial design for Create Medication label, because I know that's the problem that I have to work on. I will read the signature and purpose first. So I see from the signature that this function takes an animal, a drug as a string, a dose as a float, and instructions as a string, and returns a string. And from the purpose, I see that it should return the text to print on a medication label for a pet, and the dose must be in milligrams per kilogram. That's giving me a pretty good idea of what this function needs to do, but I'm also going to glance at the examples. I see two examples, and for the first one, it's returning the string, give Whiskers 18.0 milligrams metronidazole once per day by mouth, which really helps me understand what this function is doing. I'm imagining that this function might be used at a veterinary pharmacy to print labels that they put on medication bottles that they dispense to their clients. Now I want to look at the rest of the code that was provided to me. A quick glance tells me that I have one data definition design and one fully complete function design. I want to emphasize that I am not going to read this code line by line from top to bottom. Instead, I'm going to start with the data definition and read the data type definition and interpretation. I can see that this is a compound and that it stores information about an animal. It stores a species as a string, a name as a string, a breed as a string, and a weight as a float that must be positive. When I look at the interpretation, I see that it's an animal patient at a vet clinic with its species, name and breed, and weight in kilograms. That's enough information for me to understand what data this type stores and how I can use it. So I'm not going to read the rest of the data definition design at this point. If I need to see further details about how to form data of this type, or if I need to use its template, I will come back and read those parts of the data definition when I need them. Next, I'm going to look at the signature and purpose for the complete function design. Here we have a function called calculate dose that takes a weight as a float and a dose as a float and returns a float. The purpose says takes the pet's weight in kilograms and the dose in milligrams per kilogram and returns the appropriate dose in milligrams. I could read this function design in more detail, but as I just need to use it, I don't need any more information now. The signature and purpose should give me enough information to be able to call this function if I find that I need it. Now I've looked at the provided data definition and function design, I'm going to go back to the task at hand, knowing that I can always come back and read each of those previously designed pieces in more detail if I need to. I need to complete this function design, and the steps up to and including the examples have already been completed. So I'll start with the template. I see that this function takes a compound, an animal, and 3 atomic non-distinct parameters. So I'll use the template from animal. I'll copy the body of the template, paste it in, comment out the body of the stub, and remember to make a note about where the template came from. This function also takes 3 atomic parameters, so I need to add those in as other pieces that I have to work with. And then I need to update my template note. This is no longer just the template from animal, it's the template from animal with 3 additional parameters. I've completed the template, so I'm going to go and look carefully at the examples for this function again, so that I can make sure that the function I write will return the expected result. Looking at the first example, I can see that I need the word give, followed by the pet's name, followed by the appropriate dose of medication, followed by the drug name, followed by the instructions. I can start building this string. I'm going to be concatenating strings together, starting with the string give, with a space after it, and then the animal's name. I don't need the species at all, so I will delete it. So give, whiskers, and then I need the dose. I'm just going to write dose for now because I don't have a dose for this particular pet yet. I have a dose in milligrams per kilogram, but I need to figure out the dose for this particular animal. I don't need the breed to create this string, so I'll delete it as well. I'm going to leave the weight because I know that the weight is going to be necessary to calculate the dose. I do need the drug, and I'll remember to include the extra space. And finally, I need the instructions. I'm going to move dose over here, and we'll come back to figure out how to calculate the dose for this animal. We're starting to build this string, and I need to figure out the dose for this particular pet. I can think back to the helper function that has already been designed. It takes a weight in kilograms and a dose in milligrams per kilogram, and returns the appropriate dose in milligrams. So I want to call this helper function. I'll check the order of the arguments. First, it takes the animal's weight, followed by the dose in milligrams per kilogram. I can also see that calculate dose is going to return a float, but I know that I want to concatenate strings, so I'll use the built-in function that takes input and returns it as a string. I think I'm going to need an extra space there. I'm going to run this and see if I've completed my function design. I'm checking to see if this function is returning the expected result. Not quite. I'm examining what was expected and what the function returned, and it looked like the only thing missing is the units in the string. It's saying give 18.0, not 18.0 milligrams. So I need to add milligrams in the string. Let's run again, and now all of our tests passed. What we just saw was an example of how to complete a partially completed function design. We focused on strategically reading code that is provided to us.